Welcome to the Advisor Insights interviews and podcast. I'm here with a very special guest here, Mel Venes, joining me today. Welcome, Mel.
Hey, lovely to be here, Louise.
Yeah, it's terrific to have you here too. And this is such an interesting topic, Mel, with regards to, the use of advisory boards and committees and associations and professional bodies. It's a big topic, but you're the best person to be talking about it because you've got a real live case study. And I want to unpack that in a bit of detail, but not straight away. First of all, love to really get the listeners to get to learn a bit about you, your amazing story, about your thought leadership around professional bodies and associations, and then really then leading into this case study of something that's happening for you right now, which is really exciting. But first of all, Mel, why is this topic so important to you? And maybe share a bit about your background as well.
Yeah, so I've been in membership bodies for 13 years. Eight of those have been looking after panels and committees. Um, so and that's not necessarily being in the grains of it all, but trying to oversee it and see different processes and try and implement different ways of improving the structure. So yeah, as I say, a bit about me though. 13 years in associations. Before that, I was traveling around Australia. And before that, I was actually in banking. So that's where I started my career, which is very different to where I am now, but all part of the jigsaw to get me to here. Um, so yeah, we've been had an adventure at ACCA particularly over the last 3 years with advisory boards. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation and how we kind of evolve on that.
Yeah, thank you. Great to know that you've been involved in advisory boards, and great to know that you spent time in Australia. That's the most important piece of that information for me. You're also an interesting professional because you're also doing different things. Now, I believe you're writing a book at the moment. You're an author in the making. Do you want to share a bit about, is it the journey of shared motherhood?
That's exactly it. So currently have been going through the last nearly 3 years of reciprocal IVF with my wife. And I couldn't find any support information aside the professional guidance around it. So decided to put my thoughts, feelings, emotions, and everything on paper. Yeah, and have started writing a book about it. So
Ah.
still a long way to go, but it's there's lots in it, and I hope even if it can help one person, yeah, it'll make it all worth it.
Yeah, well, I'd love to read it when I'll be in the lineup to read it. I think anyone who writes a book and has the courage to do that is it is such a courageous move to do it, Mel. So good on you for exploring that and wanting to share it with other people as well that experience the same thing.
Yeah, I think it'll be quite a vulnerable experience, but that's something new too, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So professional bodies and associations, it's a tricky structure, isn't it? There's so many different moving parts to their role. Why do you think advisory boards and committees, probably in the first instance are now shifting into advisory boards? Why do you think they really exist within these complex organisations, Mel?
I think like historically, committees and things like that were there for an engagement purpose, but also giving a role and being extra resource for bodies. Um, so using them to actually take ownership of the entire like what was happening in a certain area or a certain sector or whatever it may have been historically. But for now and what's needed in modern day advisory boards and panels, as we call them, is gaining that insight. It's really trying to advise us of what is needed to be able to evolve products, satisfaction, you know, as an organization, you can only reach a certain amount of people. Usually, lots of organizations use things like a survey, a satisfaction survey. In
Mm,
reality, everyone doesn't really want to fill out questionnaires all the time and give their feedback and thoughts, and feels like it doesn't go anywhere. And
mm,
while us at ACCA, we actually, with my team, I have a structure in terms of reaching out again to those people just to make sure you've been listened to.
mm,
Um, but that's not enough. So essentially, having an advisory board there, you've got a select group of people that are able to advise you of their business insights, be the voice of the wider sphere. So,
mm,
at ACCA, we've got 102,000 members. We cannot capture all of their insights. So it's trying to have those touch points. And for us, the evolution of how we've got to where we have done with our sector panels has been brilliant in terms of providing that insight. But I think
mm.
you've always got to have the right people there and make sure you've got the right framework, yeah, to be able to capture all of that.
And I guess they're all stakeholders within the system itself, Mel. You've got representation from different stakeholders on these advisory boards and committees.
So within our ones at the moment, they're all members, but we
Mm,
do allow guests to come in. So we do have some
mm,
strategic alliances with other professional bodies. So
mm,
we do create invitations to gain wider voices.
mm.
Um, so yeah, it is mainly our members within those, but the
Yeah.
opportunity to go wider.
Yeah, and it's interesting where sometimes they're called committees, sometimes they're called advisory boards. Where do you see the title of an advisory board as being really useful when you're bringing people together? Is it a different value proposition for people to volunteer or to contribute?
I think it's a hard one because there's so many people understand things as different things. A
Mm,
lot of people feel like being on a committee for an association is, super important, and it's more about the prestige of actually being within that. And then you've got the other side where it's the advisory side is so attractive because they want to give back and be able to give their insight and knowledge into the conversation to help better things. So it's very different,
mm,
depending on who you're talking to.
mm,
I love the word advisory and that advice because for me it all feeds into insight and business intelligence, and then it just feels a lot more modern, as you say.
yeah.
And that's kind of how I've tried to instill the language in our panels at ACCA, is they're coming in to be advisors to help support us. But I
Mm,
think there's other parts to that, isn't there? It's around making sure that the purpose is there too. So
mm,
and that's all part of, even part of advisory boards is making sure that purpose and objective is so tight.
mm.
Uh, so yeah, we took a lot of learnings from yourself, if I'm honest, Louise, through the evolution. So
Yeah, well, it's a shame, isn't it? Because these organisations are so critically important, and it relies on volunteers to do it. So people want to feel valued, and I think that, when we first met, we were talking about when you've got the protocols in place, you've got a charter, you've got really good frameworks, the purpose is really clear, people are intentional, that value, people feeling valued in that. If they're going to give their time for free, it's important, isn't it, to feel valued in that process.
absolutely, it's got to be a two-way thing. Um,
Mm,
that's the importance of it, and that's why putting additional pieces in around, yes, clear objectives, but making sure when we get through a year with our wonderful volunteers and advocates, I prefer to call them, um, we're shouting back around what we've achieved over that year so that
mm,
they are feeling that purpose, but also reignites that passion of why they're there,
mm,
and then encourages them for the next year to build that energy to keep
mm,
wanting to advocate and be a part
mm.
of the conversation.
Yeah, yeah, and they know that they've contributed to something really worthwhile. That's really nice. So,
Absolutely.
if you think about the motivations, there are different motivations. What's the motivation for the organisations? If we just look at that value exchange, what value is provided, and what's actually being received, two different things, aren't they? What's the motivation for organisations or the professional bodies and associations to have these advisory boards? And then what's the motivations for the individuals? If we were just to summarise what we're just talking about, I'd really love to hear your point of view.
I think motivations for the organisation is by gaining by gaining advocates or by gaining that volunteer to want to be part of the conversation, you're naturally getting an advocate. The voice then goes wider. So it
Mm,
is a louder voice on potential messages that you're trying to give, or you've also got the help to guide us into certain ways. If you could have a product owner delivering, wanting to support members in a way, but that may not be what the members require or need. So by gaining
mm,
that insight, it is really valuable to make sure that we're trying to listen
mm,
and give the members actually what they need in their businesses, in their organizations to
mm,
thrive. So yeah, and then there's the essence of kind of where required, they can support the teams in delivery of these of
mm,
activities if there's a certain need. Um, if they're passionate to be within the panels, usually they want to contribute to speaking opportunities or events, and again, then that supports the wider voice of the association,
yeah.
brand and awareness.
Yeah, yeah. And look, committees sometimes get a bad rap, Mel, to be honest. You know, people contribute, it's pro bono, and, you know, when people are busy, sometimes they go, oh, not another meeting, or not the same meeting that we keep on having, and nothing's happening. So um, and the same with advisory boards. Sometimes advisory boards work, sometimes they don't. What's been your experience too about what works and what doesn't work with some constructs in professional bodies and associations?
I think it's definitely having clear objectives. Why are we coming together? Um, and making sure that we're not talking about the same thing each time. Um, it's also trying to get different tools in place to be able to hear different voices. Um, so yeah, so different tools helps, having it structured but not too formal. They've certainly been ways that have helped. Um,
That's great. You know, when you think about some committees, you just see the same people all the time. And I think it's really interesting when you talk about getting a fresh approach and fresh voices in these meeting structures too.
Absolutely. So that's kind of a bit about the retirement in rotation, and we had that as quite an old structure.
Right.
But then we changed the model to actually rather than it be an elected model, we moved into a appointed model. So we open the doors to everyone once a year for the spaces, so that people can put themselves forward and be part of these conversations. So
Mm,
that allows us then to get that diverse perspective. Of course, there are terms we like people to kind of to provide or to sit on the panels with, but yeah, it's also a structure where if people don't feel like they want to contribute anymore, they can step away. If life gets too
mm,
busy, that's no problem too, and they
mm,
can come back at another time when the time might be right.
mm,
There's
mm.
obviously only a certain amount of spaces on panel,
Yeah.
because otherwise it would become unruly, and we do have
Mm.
quite a lot on them anyway. But in any set meeting, you can only have so many join that can join on that day anyway.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You can have an advisory panel for a specific purpose, and when that job is done, you close the thing down. And so, yeah, it's not running out of steam or overstaying its welcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about the big case study. I'm so excited about what you've been doing. So uh, the Big Four and mid-tier advisory panel, you've got 8 members on it, and it's a local strategy. So tell me, Mel, how's that been going? What have been the lessons learnt for you?
Yes, but it's been really exciting, and I'm so glad we've been able to create our own fresh advisory board. So, I mean, the UK strategy has changed over the years since I've been with ACCA, but there was a gap. There was a gap in terms of the insights we were receiving around the members within large firms and the Big Four. So we knew that we had to kind of think of how we were going to gain those insights. And kind of after working with all of the panels, we thought, let's create something to be able to gain that perspective. So one of my team worked really hard in creating the proposition of what we wanted. So we knew we wanted a diverse perspective. We knew we wanted to keep numbers small. Um, so we created an application form, and then we were really surprised with the amount of individuals that wanted to put themselves forwards. But then sometimes you get an influx within the same organization. So it's then trying to reposition actually, no, we need to get representation in others. So that went really well. I think in 24 hours, there was about nearly 50 applications.
Right.
Um, and we settled on having 8 professionals within that advisory board. We've had 2 meetings. They've both been very, very structured agendas. So it's very clear. There's 3 items on it, which we learn. And the engagement has been great. So the insights, we wouldn't have gained those without having this advisory board. It's so interesting to watch the dynamic of advisory boards because you've got challenge and when you've got those different perspectives, others, think of different ways and coming at things from different angles. So really helps that conversation. So off the back of having those conversations, Sophie, my team, has been able to create opportunities. So essentially, the main thing was to build the advisory board to understand what their need and requirements are and how we can support them. And then there's the element then of, okay, what do we do to support them even further or from their needs? So yeah, Sophie's put on some great events and is working with each of them as advocates as well, wanting to give back and get involved more around case studies, community building within their organizations. So there's been some great learnings from, great wins from it, that's for sure.
Yeah, interesting. And it's such a strategic level too. Like customer advisory boards are really known commercially where you co-create your product and service with your customer, doing it with members. I guess if you had a committee versus the advisory board, is the difference the focus and the structure of the meeting? So is the difference getting more value from the conversations and the construct? Is that where you're seeing the shift?
I think so because it can be more flexible and you haven't got the historic approach to it.
Right.
So people have a feeling or sense of what they want to achieve by being in this committee. But then when you're having an advisory board, they're very clear on it is for a set purpose.
Mm.
Um, so there's definitely wins to it. Yeah. And I mean, even so, there's an advisory board I'm desperate to create, but I'm not there yet. And I want to make sure I'm ready, that we've got the right people to be able to contribute to that before we jump in and just do it because we want it
Yeah.
to be as most impactful as possible. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's good to take your time to do it well because the lasting impact is much greater than trying to do it really fast.
absolutely.
Yeah. So most associations, professional bodies have a lot of committees and it's draining. It's a lot of work. It's very easy to be tired by the amount of moving parts in managing these things. And I guess you've been doing it for a really long time, Mel. So and you've seen ones that work that don't work. You've got this refreshed approach now with this advisory board for the big four and mid tier. Other organisations, if they're thinking about establishing and managing a high functioning advisory board, what would you suggest that they do from your direct experience, from your lived experience that you've had in the establishment of these new best practice advisory boards?
I think they've got to just step back and look a second about what is the current situation if you're in, and
Mm.
how much time and resource you're putting into things. We had, I think it was close to 50 50 panels at one stage, and we moved those down to 6. So
Wow.
we reframed and restructured a huge. We went through a massive transition, and it's been hugely valuable. Um, it's looking at what the requirement is and not just having. It goes back to that history as well. It's not just having things for the sake of it and letting things move on,
Yeah.
and go on and on and on. When what is the impact? If there's no
Mm,
impact coming out of the meetings, then why are you having it?
mm,
So I think it's to really look at what situation you're in. Um, what would great look like? What is it? What is the business after as well? What key elements does the business need for having these committees or panels? Um, and then look at how you can modernize that approach. Having less structure around it, using tools as well to be able to minimize your team's time
yeah.
in even us having the amount we have. It's, as you say, it's still so time consuming, making sure you're having the right meetings with the right peoples, and making sure that instilling having that meeting with the chair is
Mm,
absolutely critical. And it's not for me, it's not just about having a meeting before a meeting. It's actually about having an ongoing relationship with that individual, especially within members, because you work quite closely with them anyway.
mm,
So building a relationship so that you're both on the same page when you're going into the meetings. Um, so yeah, we've learned a lot along the way, and that's why I'm so excited about having these refreshed, even more refreshed from the huge transition um, approaches, because it's just we're just gaining insight just we never had before, and the team are actually feeling energy from it because it's helping them do their work, and
yeah.
essentially that's what you want them to do to help. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. From 50 down to 6, and you're getting greater value from those advisory board structures. How amazing. Like the wear and tear with 50, that's a lot of it's a lot of noise, a lot of expectations. How
Mm.
long can I just ask you, how long did that take to then remap that out and shift from the 50, committee structure and panel structure down to the highly effective 6 and getting them operational?
That was a course of about 3.5 years.
3.5 years.
So
Wow.
a long time, a
Yeah.
lot of consultations. And the thing is, the business didn't, and this is another thing to think about, is the business didn't take the approach themselves, just themselves. We went through consultation for nearly 2 years to
Yeah.
make sure the members' voices were heard, to be
Yeah.
part of the change.
Mm.
Um, so it was based off of, their insights and feedback was what helped drive us. So
Yeah. Yeah. A great case that less is more.
100%.
Yeah, a bit like the agendas, right? Having less information on the agenda, not the preparation, but just to give it time to breathe and create value.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That has been key. And that's been one thing that's been, stayed with the team.
Mm.
Um, it's also just thinking about kind of just not just that, about the engagement side of things as well.
Mm.
It's that kind of making sure people are aware of what they're saying within those meetings.
Yeah.
We talked about the 30-second rule.
Yeah.
Um, so heaps of hints and tips we've learned along the way. But
I
it's a
would
great
say.
place we're in now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Mel, congratulations on what an amazing case study, and still and that transition. It's not just the end result, but the transition that you made that safe for everybody and to be involved, but then to create greater value as an output from that. It is so good for you to share this story, and thank you so much for implementing best practice and making a difference in the areas that make it really count.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and allowing me to, share my thoughts
Yeah,
with you.
Thank you, and we'll catch up again and see what the next iteration is. So,
Absolutely. I'll keep you posted.
yeah, with the book. So you'll have a book in your
Ah,
hand, and then we'll be talking about the next one. So Mel, thank you, and I encourage everybody to connect in with Mel to not only about the advisory boards but also about the book when it comes out. And thank you, Mel. We'll talk again, and thank you everybody for listening. Bye for now.
appreciate it. Bye bye.